Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Pathways to Growth to Expansion. Today, we're going to be talking about permitting. You don't have to do it alone. We welcome you on behalf of our President and CEO, Mr. David Iannucci of Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation, and we will be starting shortly. At this time, we also would like to thank our sponsors, Lurch Early Brewer. And we're looking forward to a great day. So if you have a few moments, grab a cup of coffee, but we'll be with you shortly. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. We're just allowing folks to come into the room. We'll be getting started shortly. We have a packed session for you with lots of information. If you want to introduce yourself, feel free to introduce yourself. Please know that we're going to be taking questions in the Q&A. And you can also put the industry you're in if you're interested in the chat, or otherwise just know that you do have access to that. We'll be starting in just a few moments. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to welcome you from Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation to this morning's program, our Pathways to Growth and Business Expansion. This is the 7th session in a series of programs, 15 programs that we've designed to help businesses grow and expand here in Prince George's County. So far, we've covered elements related to tools and resources related to site selection, different processes, planning process, and legal elements and case studies on sessions and lessons learned so that businesses cannot make the same mistakes others have made and learn from them and not make costly mistakes. So we want to thank everybody today for joining us here for permitting. Today's session is about the doing things not alone, but collaboratively. And so you should know that the Economic Development Agency is here to assist you, as we've noted in the earlier sessions, whether that's related to the permitting process, the planning process, the site selection process, The Department of Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation is here to help you through all those processes in partnership with our sister agencies. So today's session is really talking about permitting and licensing. We want to thank our sponsors, Reilly Brewer, and we want to thank our panelists joining us today, Nicole, Reece, Clarence Mosley, and Myra Leonard from the Department of Permitting, Inspection, and Enforcement. And we want to thank James Reilly from the Fire Marshal's Office and Debra Freeman from the Health Department. Next slide, please. So my name is Alicia Moran, and I'm the Manager of Small Business Development here at Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation. I also manage Innovation Station, our collaborative co-working space, business incubator, and CEO accelerator for our international businesses. Next slide, please. The Pathways series is designed to help our businesses grow here in the county. Over the past 3 years, we have hosted a number of sponsored programs in the Pathways series. We had a Pathways to Financial Management, Pathways to Procurement, and now our Pathways to Business Growth and Expansion. You can find on our website, pgcedc.com, the past sessions that we've done in all of these series, whether it's financial management, procurement, or in this series, business growth and expansion. So know that our website is a great resource for you, and know that the Pathways series is done in partnership with our sister agencies here in the county, as well as state agencies, whether that be the Governor's Office on Small Minority Women-Owned Businesses and or the Minority Business Development Agency, SCORE, SBDC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and many others. So know that through the EDC and through the Pathways program, we're helping you to get to resources that are hopefully going to help you grow and expand here. Next slide, please. The Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation has a plethora of programs. Right now, I would encourage you to be aware of our Buy Prince George's campaign. It is the holiday season, and I would just encourage you to look to see if there are Prince George's County-based businesses you can support. So right now, the Buy Prince George's campaign is something I would point you to directly. But there are a host of programs that we do throughout the year, as you see. Next slide, please. Our core services, again, as we've noted, really are helping our companies grow, helping them with site selection, helping them with permitting, helping them with the whole process of starting their business, whether that's reviewing their business plan, helping them form their strategy for business expansion, helping them to get connected to capital or other resources. So again, there are a host of things that we do, including these educational programs like the Pathways series. Next slide, please. There are a team of people here at the EDC to help you. The business development team is talented and experts in a number of areas. We have Nicole Haw and Alexis and many others here. So we have healthcare liaisons. We have somebody who's an expert in the retail restaurant community. We have experts in construction and transportation and logistics. We have experts in the technology space and experts in our government agencies and government contracting, as well as experts in international business. So whatever resource you need, whether it's finance or small business or any of the other areas we've mentioned, as well as others, please know whatever industry sector you're in, we have resources to assist you. And if you don't know your economic development team here at Prince George's County, I encourage you to get to know them and let us help you grow your business here in Prince George's County. Next slide, please. Again, we're talking about small business services and small business services, including Innovation Station, which is our collaborative co-working space and business incubator. And this is behind me here. And so you should know that throughout the region, we have many innovation hubs at the community college, at the Bowie State University, at University of Maryland, and other locations. So please know that there are resources for both innovators as well as small businesses. Next slide, please. An additional resource that I just wanted to mention is Reilly Brewer. We have done programs with them and other talking about starting your business and growing your business, you should also know that the University of Maryland has a reboot program posted where businesses and individuals can find information about how to grow your business, whether you need marketing or finance help. And again, so tap into the Smith School of Business. We have a number of other programs that we've done in partnership with our partners throughout the county to shine a light on Prince George's County through our Global Entrepreneurship Week efforts and many other programs. Next slide, please. I want to thank you for joining us here today. And again, encourage you to take a look at our website, to follow us on social media, to subscribe to our BizBuzz newsletter, and to also know that our next upcoming programs will be coming in January and be focused on the financial elements of growing your business. But right now, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of building permits, use and occupancy, licensing, and inspections. Thank you. I'm turning the program over now to Nicole Reece. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Reece. I am the Business Development Officer for DPIE, and I will be speaking with you today about building permits, U&Os, licensing, and inspections. I wanted to first start off just speaking briefly about the permit division structure. This is the initial division structure that you will be in contact with when you file for a building permit. We have the permitting and licensing division. This is a division that you will see on the first floor when you come into DPIE. We're currently open. We're taking appointments only for building permits, and I'll let Clarence Mosley, my colleague who is on here, the permit center manager, go into a little bit more detail later about that. But on the first floor, you will also find the cashier's office, and you will also find the homeowner and mega project suite. We also have the site road plan review division. This is the division that will be reviewing plans if you're doing any kind of excavation work, sidewalk work, or any traffic lighting, engineering, or anything in that regard. The last division is the building plan review division. This is the division that looks at all of the design plans for your space, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's the fire life safety section, the structural section, the electrical section, the mechanical section, and the health review section. So some critical points I want to go over before applying for a permit. It is critical that you hire qualified architects, engineers, and contractors. You should be familiar with Prince George's County permitting processes and building code. We do come in, we see this a lot initially, and so we want to encourage that you make sure that you hire qualified design professionals. Make sure that you get references, that you, even if you can see their work initially, before you hire them would be a good idea. They should be licensed and bonded. Be sure to identify them. And so this is where I wanted to talk about, there are two options, obviously. You can have your design professional apply, which we encourage, but we know that sometimes that may not be possible, but you should definitely have them identified on the permit application either way, as if you're the business owner applying or the contractor, and you would need to include the following: the owner, occupant, contractor, and contact information. If the contractor is applying, be sure to get all of that information, verify permit receipt, make sure that it has been filed. You're paying for this service, so you want to make sure that you're getting top-notch service from your contractor. The most important thing, make sure you are identified on the permit. Why is this important? One, you want to make sure that your business is the correct business is identified on this permit, especially when the inspector comes out, but also you want to be included in the initial application, and I'll get into that later. We find that sometimes the business owner is not getting the most up-to-date information as far as the status of their permit. You can be added your email, and you will be given a username and login, and you can log in yourself and you can see the status. This is very important. If you are having problems navigating ePlan, there is a training. I'll talk about that later. You can reach out to me. I have walked some owners through that. There is a project reports button in ePlan, and you can see everything, the entire history of the case. In addition, know your project deadlines. If you're signing a lease to start in May, please make sure that your permits are filed in sufficient time. Time is money. And so by knowing your project deadlines, you're making sure that you are not paying rent for a space that you're not allowed to occupy or open. And so have your financing, go over your building schedule with your contractor, your design professionals, all of this so that you can time your lease so that you can get the most out of obviously making money. This is what is key here. I wanted to go over just a high level of the permitting process. I'll get into this detail a little later, and some of my colleagues who are also on the call. You will first initially file for an application. This is online. Everything is online now since COVID. You will pay the initial fees. It will then go through a plan screening, which makes sure that all the components are there. If it's correct, it will then pass on to the DPIE review team. And this is where all of our different sections will review your plans. If there's any health components to it, food, anything impacting the health, and Ms. Freeman and Ms. Leonard will go into detail with that. It will go through a health review. What happens next is if it does not meet county code, and this is where when I say know your deadlines and your timelines for your project, if it does not meet county code or there are corrections needed, it will go through a revision stage. And this could be 1 to 2, 3 revisions. Revisions are 2 to 3 weeks. And I'll get into this in more detail, but the initial application phase is 4 to 6 weeks. But if there are corrections needed, it could be an additional 2 to 3 weeks. So when you're signing your lease, make sure that you have incorporated all of those timelines for anything that could happen along the way. In addition to that, we also have a zoning review going on at the same time simultaneously. MNC PPC, which is the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, I know that's a mouthful, we usually just call them park and planning, will be reviewing for the use part. And that is zoning. And so while we're also looking at all of your building plans, we're also, your application is being reviewed by zoning, and they have their own timelines. Again, you can log into ePlan and see all of this. You'll see the person assigned for each particular review, and their email is there. You can reach out to them. So let's just say everything goes perfect. You will then pay your final fees, and then the plans will be approved. Westfields have to be dropped off, and then your permit will be issued. And then it will go through to an inspection stage. And I will get into a lot more detail as we go along. So as I said, you will submit your application online at this link. You can also reach this at our DPIE main page. Fees may be paid cash, check, or money order. The initial 50% of the project estimated, you will put an estimated cost there. This will be adjusted on the end by our review team. They have a chart that they use based on the construction, but this will be issued at the end, and this is a final payment that must be paid before the permit is issued. You can find our fee schedule at this link. This PowerPoint will be available later, which has the new fees, and it gives you an idea of every permit that is issued from DPIE and what the costs are. As I was initially saying, this is important zoning. Zoning is really critical. We cannot do anything without zoning. This ordinance specifies permissible uses such as residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, or mixed race. The ordinance provides for enforcement of private properties throughout the county, except in the city of Laurel. As I stated, the applications are being reviewed. Your application is reviewed simultaneously by DPIE and Park and Planning, and either it will be Debra's team or Maher's team for any health-related reviews. Park and Planning also reviews for the allowable lot coverage for property. A lot of questions come up as far as when do I need a zoning approval? You will need it in these circumstances: to build on vacant land, to add an addition to an existing business building, to change the use of a building and to change the exterior of a building. I've seen situations where an addition was added, and I'll get into that when I talk about a use and occupancy permit. An addition was added, let me just go back, an addition was added and then it was not approved by zoning, particularly if it's encroaching a sidewalk. And so those are extreme circumstances. So when you're buying a property or leasing a property, you want to do some background check. Either you can ask for a FOIA request through our department. Most of the permits are online. You can actually log in and see what permits were issued. So it's critical that you do your background research because it can get very expensive. If you buy a property, you find that there was an entire addition added on the property and there's no permit issued. When our inspectors come out, they will do background research on the property. They can also see, for example, inside, if it's a 1970 building and the bathroom looks like it's been constructed in the last 5 years, and there is no permit issued in our system, you will be asked to correct that. So it's critical that you do your research before signing a lease. You can also reach out to Park and Planning. They have a link. You can submit an information request. It's only $50. You can find out everything from what the property is zoned for, prior use, all of that information. I think is worth $50 to look and just make sure that you're going in there with all the information that you need to make, because these can have some financial ramifications. A lot of questions come up regarding a building permit, and you're a new business, you don't understand what that is. It's essentially a construction. It's the same thing, but it is defined in our county code as erecting a building or structure, unless exempted under the building code, enlarging, structurally altering, moving, or adding to an existing building or structure, or excavating for any building or structure. So any of these fall under a building permit. What does that mean? And I'll get into that later. You will need a full set of plans. I get a lot of questions. I'm just taking down one wall. You are structurally altering that business. And so it's critical that you, again, when you're making this decision and signing a lease, that you are fully aware of, again, all the financial circumstances or requirements. It may not be a good idea to go into that space. We cannot change that. Let's say, for example, you were to get past Clarence's group and you're going to get rejected by inspections, because when they come out and they can see that there's a structural change, they're going to have you get back in line in the queue for a building permit. So it's better to have all this information up front. Submittal of plans. As I was stating, all plan submittals must be electronic. It's all online now. We do have e-plan training, and that will resume in January 2022. For business owners who are doing this on your own, it's particularly use and occupancy. The e-plan training is critical. I've seen business owners get stuck here for weeks, and so it is critical that you take the e-plan training or do the online webinar. And this is really, really critical. Applicants must upload the plans in single sheets. And so that's another roadblock that we see. And so as you're uploading your docs, it needs to be individual. And this is all discussed in the training. As I stated, you're going to need to, for a building permit, submit all the full set of plans, the civil, structural, trade, and site plans with the application. There is a quick start guide that you can use that is available at this link. It's also on our website. It's a kind of a quick and dirty guide to just guide you through getting through the e-plan system and just learning how to use it. As I stated before, you're going to go through a plan screening, and this is just to make sure that everything is, all the components are there, and this is required for all submittals now. If it's insufficient information, it will be sent back. Once it has achieved a positive screening, it will then go through the review process. These are the plans that are needed for building permit review: site plan, structural, architectural, mechanical, electrical. Health is also, if there's any health related issues, and my colleagues will get into that later. We do not do plumbing. Sometimes we get confused. They're in our building on I can't remember, I think it's the 6th floor, but you can also Google them. If you're doing any kind of plumbing work, you will need to go through WSSC separately. As I was stating, health review is required for food, public pools, spa, potential air pollution, and property. If you are doing a fire protection system or need an update to a sprinkler, this is a separate permit. A lot of people get confused with that. Make sure you go ahead and time that accurately. I've helped businesses who are ready to go, and then the fire permit is filed. And so that's another 2 to 3 weeks that they're waiting for their permit. So again, making sure that you have a business plan laid out of when all of this is going to be filed in a timely manner. All plans need to be signed and sealed by a professional architect or engineer. We see that a lot, and you may want to hire your neighbor. And I'm not saying you shouldn't hire your neighbor, but you just want to make sure. I always believe in getting 3 estimates, and I think you want to make sure to do your research, get references, make sure they're qualified to do what you're hiring them to do. And as I stated previously, make sure that you get all your other trade permits done in a timely manner. Any food manager license that you may need through Debra's team, all of those components. We do have a tenant fit out guide. It's the same as a building permit. Your landlord would probably call it a tenant fit out. You're just fitting that space out for your business need, but it's all the same, within the same terminology. It's essentially construction, a building permit. So as I stated, you go through the DPIE. Let's just say you decide to go through DPIE. That is 4 to 6 weeks. You can go through our plan reviews, and our engineers will look at, and if you're doing, depending on what you're doing, the building plan review or the site road or both, but you can jump the line, and this will cut down on the 4 to 6 week, is a third-party plan program. We have 2 programs under it. We have the third-party plan review and the peer review. Third-party is usually bigger, very big projects. It's more expensive. Again, it's a lot faster. It can cut down on the time review by 80%. I've seen some done in a week. For the peer review, which I would recommend for your smaller businesses, medium and small businesses, that is 10 business days by county code. And again, I think it's worth it. Time is money. You should look into it. It doesn't hurt to get an estimate. We have a list of certified, but for both, reviewers for both on our webpage. But if you have difficulty getting to that, you can certainly email me. For our third-party fire inspections, that is actually mandatory. So if you're doing any fire sprinkler system, you're going to have to hire a third party for that. And you can also find that list on our website as well. So again, I'm not going to go over this and repeat it, but it's 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks for a permit to complete the review cycle, and any revisions is another 2 to 3 weeks. Please make corrections in a timely manner. We find also that business owners, the contractor will say it's with DPIE. And so we'll log in and we'll see it's an applicant upload. It may be sent to the spam folder. And so the contractor needs to make sure that they're checking it regularly. But also, if you have access to ePlan, if you've asked your contractor, your design professional to add you, you'll be getting those updates as well. So you can sort of stay on top of that with them, because I know sometimes they may be doing different projects at the same time. So it's just critical to make sure that you stay on that, and as far as making sure that you receive any updates in a timely manner. Use and occupancy requirements. So a permit is needed, a U&O permit is needed regardless. And I think this is another key that needs to be honed in on, that you cannot occupy a space without a use and occupancy. You must obtain it whenever there's a change in tenancy, change of use, your name or property owner. It needs to reflect everybody that legally is either occupying or own the property. What this says is that the business identified meets local zoning and safety requirements and may legally operate at that location. There's no grandfathering. I think that there's some confusion sometimes around that as far as even if you change the business name, no, you have to, even if you're the same person, you need to change it to reflect the new business. Also, if the inspector comes and there's any construction done, and it's, I've seen this before, well, that bathroom was done, 10 years ago. You're going to be required to get a permit because it may not be up to code. There's ADA requirements, so you want to make sure, again, that you're doing all of your research, as I stated before you sign the lease. These are the things that are needed to file for a use and occupancy. Regardless, you can go straight to a U&O if you're buying a Popeyes and you're not changing anything and you're not doing construction. Regardless, with the construction and a use and occupancy, or just a use and occupancy, you're going to need a property tax ID. You can get that from the PG Atlas. Your landlord should have that information. I've seen also applicants get stuck there because they don't have the property tax ID. Go ahead and get all that information up front when you're signing the lease. You're going to need a site plan, which your landlord should have. Occasionally, parking planning. For example, if a business has been there 40 years and there's been no need to do a new one, sometimes you can get one from parking planning. The extreme circumstances that you will have to pay to have one done. And one other critical for home businesses, particularly daycares, I've seen sometimes the owner may not have gotten that in their closing documents. They should have gotten a home survey. Recently, I had someone who there was a signature that you could waive getting that. Don't waive getting that because you never know if you need that at some later point. So she did have to pay for that to operate her home business. And so if you are going to closing, go ahead and make sure you get all the documents you need, file it away. You never know, 10 years later, you may need that information. For leasing a space, you're going to need a lease agreement or letter of authorization signed and dated by the owner. The businesses will need the entity's name, registered agent, and the letter must be signed by an authorized member. Sometimes I've seen businesses change names. Clarence's team is checking the SDAT, which is the Maryland tax. I'll have him get into that later with questions, but it needs to match the signature. Businesses must be registered in the state of Maryland. In addition, if you're making any structural changes, you need permission from the landlord. This also absolves any issues later to make sure that it's clear that you were approved to make those changes. Permit timeframes. Once the permit application has been filed, permit must be issued within 6 months of the application date or it becomes void. And once issued, work must begin within 6 months of permit issuance. Construction inspections are required a minimum every 6 months to keep the permit valid, and only exceptions are grading permits, which have up to a 5-year lifespan. We see a lot of expiration of permits, and this is designed so permits are just not sitting around, filing for a permit and then nothing happens. Clarence's team processes that, so it's key to stay up on that. Again, that is issued on the permit. You should be able to see that date and make sure that you stay current on it. You may ask for a renewal and an extension, and Clarence's team works on this. It must be submitted within 30 days of the expiration, and it can be granted for 2 6-month extension periods. Business licensing. The licensing center issues business licenses and regulates various business activities per the county code. The staff also monitors and investigates items, concerns related to code compliance. And this also includes ensuring that certain use and occupancy permits are current and licenses adhere to professional standards. The business licensing division is on the first floor. This is also another division that you may come in contact with depending on the type of business. These are the businesses that we regulate. We don't do a lot, and I think that's can be some confusion, but here's a list of the ones that we do in the county, and this presentation will be available later so you can go through this at your leisure. Recently, we updated our system. We transitioned to Momentum. So all of the business licensing can be done in Momentum. This is wonderful during COVID. Now customers used to have to come, it was a lot of paper. Customers can do everything online, upload documentation, make payments, and print their license at work or home. Again, as I was stating, the county doesn't do a lot, so it's critical that you make sure you check with the state of Maryland to see if you have to get a business license through them. I know, for example, like daycares, I'm trying to think of some other ones, restaurants, or any of the occupational trade licensing you want to check with the state of Maryland. And here's a link. There is a clerk of the court in Prince George's County. You can, I don't know if they're open right now, but this link will get you to them, their phone number, but also the state division for barber licensing. I'm just trying to think of some other ones. Spas. This is the department that you would work with to get get those requisite licensing that you needed. The inspections division, this is sort of the last step before you can open your business. They regulate construction, development, grading activity in the county through code enforcement inspection, except in the city of Laurel. And again, as we stated before, we enforce building, electrical, energy, fire, mechanical. The health department inspection program actually regulates inspections of food facilities for the city of Laurel. So it's key to understand that regardless if it's dealing with health, you're going to have to come through DPIE for those. And I'll let Maher delve into detail, answer any questions about that later. Again, we do building inspections. We provide oversight for residential, commercial construction and tenant renovations, and also making sure everything is done in compliance with the structural, electrical, mechanical, and structural sprinkler systems. We also have electrical staff, inspection staff who look at everything regarding electrical construction and do inspections in that regard for any projects, and making sure that everything is in compliance with electrical codes. Fire inspection, we do share that responsibility, and Mr. Reilly will go into that later. Our inspectors are certified for small spaces, small businesses, any large assembly, malls, daycares, assisted living. That is the Office of Fire Marshal. And you ask, when will I have to do that? You will do that. You will have to get a fire inspection before the final inspection. Your contractor should know, but typically when you call our online, you schedule an inspection, our inspectors do call to make sure that you're going to be there at the time, because it's a certain window. Usually, I think it's 2-hour window. They want to check and make sure that you're there. They will advise you whether or not you need that inspection. So again, it's grouped into the use and occupancy, the fire protection system certification, making sure that all the sprinkler systems have a current inspection, and then the fire prevention inspection. And again, Jim Reilly will cover the Office of Fire Marshal and their duty with respect to large spaces. As I mentioned previously, you will need to go through plumbing. If you're doing any plumbing, you will need to go through WSSC for any plumbing inspections. They do have a satellite office at DPIE. And here's the number. It's you can Google it and get any information you need regarding plumbing inspections. For site road, we do have inspectors that deal with that for any, excavation, grading work. They conduct site road and development, settlement, erosion. All of this, again, before you get your final use and occupancy. I think there is some confusion. You must go through a DPIE inspection. Period. We issue the final certificate of occupancy, our inspection team. So you have to go through them. This is all indicated on your job card. If you are the applicant, you will get a job card. It's loaded in the e-plan and it has all the instructions there. And so if your contractor is getting that, they should be aware of all of this. And so there's a complete use and occupancy guideline that gives you all of the information, all the requisite numbers to call to call and schedule for an inspection. There are 27 municipalities. This is another roadblock we see. If you are in College Park, Mount Rainier, the city more than likely has requirements, Bowie, before you can open your business. So make sure, again, when you're doing your project timeline and knowing your deadlines, to make sure that you are going through the municipality. There's a chart here that breaks it out. But if you're in a municipality, I would call, and their websites are pretty robust. I've looked at several of them, worked with a lot of economic development managers in those cities, and they have everything there online. But if you need to reach someone directly, you can also email me. But this chart also outlines, for example, you may need a business license from the City of College Park or Mount Rainier. So again, you can also figure this out with the PG Atlas and looking at the boundaries, it will give you that information. Pre-construction meetings. So every project that exceeds $200,000, you are required to do a third-party inspection for that. And there is also a list, and you can email me. It's available on our website at inspections, the inspections tab. But you can also click on this link, and this will give you information about a pre-construction meeting. That's just to bring the third-party team together and make sure that everybody's on the same page. What we find, I would definitely recommend that the owner be present at this meeting, so there's no confusion. The third-party TPIP team has to be there, but the tenant owner representative, the general contractor, and the approved plans need to be available. All of that should take place just to make sure that everybody's on the same page as far as what needs to happen before construction happens. For interior alteration only permits, you need a valid use and occupancy or zoning use approval prior to that. Again, I'm not going to go over this again, but this is our TPIP program. Again, anything, as I stated before, over 200,000 is required to have a TPIP inspection. And this is, you can look at all the requirements here at this link. For the U&O inspection, the inspector is going to come out and will verify that the building meets zoning, maintenance, and life safety requirements. There is a U&O checklist. It's very technical, but you can access it at this link and on our website. It gives a list of all the things that the inspector is looking for. All of this needs to be done. If you need a fire inspection, if you need health pre-opening inspection, if you need any other type of requirements, the stickers for your system, all of that needs to be done for final inspection. Otherwise, the inspector will have to come back. And it's critical that a U&O is not a permit for a construction. I get this. I'm sure Clarence and Maher get this also. It's not the same. So you need to file for a building permit to proceed with construction. Here are the numbers for all of the inspections: health review inspection, the fire EMS, and our business licensing division will be looking to make sure U&O is issued, and while you're also filing for your business license. You may schedule your inspections online, and their complete instructions are at the website here, but you may also call as well. This will come up. This is a screen that comes up when you do it online. And if you call in, you just use this number. You're going to need a request code here, and depending on what kind of inspection that you're doing, typically, if you're hiring a professional, they're going to know all of this. The contract is going to schedule all of this for you, particularly if you're doing construction. When you are preparing for your inspection, it is critical to have everything in your permit package and make sure everything is there. Usually a contractor will know that. Occasionally I've seen the plans are not available at the site. They may be with the architect off-site. So just make sure all that is available. And the inspector is looking exactly at the plans and what is out in the field. So you want to make sure that if there is any slight change, you're going to get rejected for inspection, and hopefully will not have to go back through the building permit. So it would be better to go ahead and is required to do a plan revision up front so that you don't waste any time. Make sure that all the equipment is functioning properly. I've seen some situations where some things are broken, and that again is going to be a correction order issued by the inspector. So make sure all the door lights, safety items, extinguishers are not expired, they're working in good working order. And so any inspections, as I stated, for your systems are current, all debris and trash are removed, and don't present a fire hazard. And all of these forms, like as I stated, the U&O, but there's a host of other inspection forms that you can find at our website. Here is the number for all of our inspection teams. You may call any of these numbers to schedule an inspection. Top 10 takeaways. As I was stating, know the timing of your project. Time is money. You really need to go ahead and have a really good business plan, get a zoning determination prior to signing a lease, particularly if you're doing something. I always say you should do it every time, but because sometimes the landlord would say, no, that you can definitely do that. You can do that business, and you sign a lease and then you find out you can't. You will have to. Maybe it may not happen, but you can file for inspection exception. It may not be approved. And so it's better to just go ahead and have that information. Try, if at all possible, to go into a similar prior use space. I mean, it may not be as exciting. I know sometimes decisions are made based on foot traffic, or, oh, this is on this fancy corner. But if you have to spend $300,000 to get it up to the kind of use that you want, just make sure that you are aware of that before you're signing that lease. Again, when buying, inquire about prior permits or even leasing. I mean, prior permits or research online. You can always look that up online, or we have a public information officer in our office who will give you that information. You have to file for it, but you can also request that information. Hire professionals. Always use a professional to submit application. Be very descriptive when filing for an application. Sometimes that is an issue because when the inspector goes out, it's not what it was said on the initial application. Again, consider third-party programs. Time is money. Have your plans on site when the inspector shows up. Ask your contractor to add you to ePlan so that you get all updates regarding that. And then make sure that you check ePlan regularly. Log in or check email. Make sure your contractor is checking their spam folder. Here's the information for all of the divisions, as well as the health review section, and Clarence Mosley and his contact information. You can reach out to anyone to ask for any questions. And thank you. With that said, here's my number and email, and I will turn this over to James Reilly, who will be presenting for the Office of Fire Marshal.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I don't know if anybody can confirm.
Yes, we can hear you.
We hear
Great,
you.
thank you very much. Okay, so my name is Jim Reilly. I work for the Office of the Fire Marshal, which is an office within the Prince George's County Fire and EMS Department. So I'm going to talk about fire inspections. So, kind of continuing along with what Ms. Reece was discussing. So every business in the county has a space, and that space needs a use and occupancy permit. I think it's helpful to think about, if you're coming into the business world in Prince George's County, you want to open a business in Prince George's County, it might be helpful to think about it in two divisions. One is you're intending to do work, or you're just moving in. So if you've been awarded a franchise for a national burger chain and you're going to build a building on the corner of Main Street and First Avenue, or Glenarden Parkway and Brightsea Road, or whatever, to put it in the county, you're going to be completely in a DPIE process of building a building and opening that business. And when you complete that building and close out that permit, you'll have a use and occupancy permit. You'll move in and run your burger business. That's completely the DPIE process, and it's a very complex one. And Ms. Reece touched on a lot of those pieces, but you're obviously doing work. You're doing a lot of work if you're building a building. But generally, any kind of work, still puts you kind of down that process. So if you're doing work, altering the building in any way, that's one process. If you're not doing any work, you're just going to move into a building. So you're a young barber and an older, a longtime barber is retiring and either selling their business or leasing their space to you. It's been a barbershop for the last 30 years. You're going to move in and continue it as a barbershop. You're not intending to change anything in the building. Then there's no work involved there. And that's kind of what they call a straight U&O process. You really only need to apply for a use and occupancy permit. And as a business, as a barber, you will not need a fire inspection. There's certain inspections, there's certain inspection types. Next slide, please. There's certain inspection types that require a fire inspection as a checklist item before you can get your use and occupancy permit. So a barbershop's not one of them. A straight business use like that, where you're going in, you're taking over an existing barbershop, you're not changing anything. Generally, you're allowed to paint and maybe change the flooring. But if you're going to put up a small wall between the shampoo area and the barber chairs, that requires a building permit. Why? Well, the county wants to know if that wall is going to fall over on a customer. They want to know how it's attached to the floor. We want to know that it's not going to block the existing egress out the back. So generally, when you alter a building in any way other than, say, paint, you need a building permit, a construction permit, and you have to go to DPIE for that. So that's a separate permit from your use and occupancy permit. So if you're just a straight use and occupancy permit, you're going to open a counseling office in suite 402 of a county office building, and it used to be an accountant's office, and now you're moving in and you're going to have a counseling office in there. That's just a straight U&O case. And again, you don't need a fire inspection from the fire marshal's office for that. So next slide. But if you are planning to do an assembly, so if you're going to open a church in what used to be a grocery store, so that's change of use. So you can involve probably some construction. So you're going to be definitely involved in DPIE, for that. But if, let's say you've got an existing church and your church is going to take over that space, that's an assembly that people gather there. So that's going to need a fire marshal inspection. That's the fire marshal office in the fire department. You have to contact us for that. Same thing for educational. So you're going to open a private school or a preschool, that requires a fire marshal inspection. Same thing for daycare, assisted living, storage facilities. And the other interesting thing is most of these cases that I'm discussing here, also you need this fire marshal inspection for the licensing requirement. So if you're going to open a daycare, you need a license from the state. You're going to need a fire marshal inspection for that space to get the license. And in addition to needing that fire marshal inspection for the U&O permit. So the fire marshal inspection is a requirement for your licensing process to get certain business licenses, like a daycare license from the state or an assisted living license from the state, or maybe just to get your use and occupancy permit for an assembly from DPIE. So that's when you need a fire marshal inspection on those type of occupancies. There could be other situations, if it's a complex situation, the U&O inspector would like a fire marshal inspection. That's probably something we might assist with, or when there's a change of use. So if you take an auto body shop and turn it into an art gallery, that might require a fire marshal inspection. Especially if art gallery is an assembly. So we're back to square one. A fire marshal inspection is required. Next slide, please. So if you're going to move into a space, so let's go back to let's say it's a small church that's going to take over an existing church space, or even the barber shop. You're just trying to get a use and occupancy permit. One of the things you're going to need is a certificate. If there's a fire alarm there, then you're going to need a report saying that somebody from a fire alarm company, a commercial fire alarm vendor, has inspected that fire alarm system within the last year and it works just fine. And it's called the fire alarm certification or the annual fire alarm report. They're going to ask, you're going to need that when the U&O inspector comes, they're going to ask for that report. you get that from your landlord. If you own the building, it's your responsibility to go out and have a vendor come and do that fire alarm inspection. If you don't own the building, you're going to go to your landlord for that. But if there's a fire alarm in the building and you're intending to move into that space, you're going to need a certification of the fire alarm. And so that's why it's great to have it's important to have a good landlord. You know, if the landlord's available and works well with you, then you're going to, be able to access these reports, and they'll send them to you right away, and you'll have them when you need them for the U&O inspector or for the fire inspector. But if you have trouble getting in touch with the landlord, then that could be a sign that you're going to have problems getting through your inspections, because you're going to have trouble getting these reports. So next slide, please, or advance. So sprinklers, if the building's sprinklered, the same thing. You're in a strip shopping center, you're taking over a liquor store space, and you're going to be the new owner of it. If that strip shopping center is sprinklered, before the U&O permit can be issued, or before a fire inspection can be, before you can pass a fire inspection, if it was needed for that occupancy, you would need a report from a fire sprinkler company saying that they had checked that sprinkler system within the last year and that everything works just fine. It's called a clean report, or a report with no deficiencies. And if you own the building, it's your responsibility to get that report and maintain that sprinkler system. If you're going to lease that space, you want to make sure that the owner of that space is going to be able to provide you that report for that sprinkler system. And, and generally, if these things aren't there, you don't need these reports. If a barber shop isn't required to be sprinklered, generally. And so if it's an older shopping center where the barber shop was never sprinklered, and there's no sprinkler system, you don't need the sprinkler report. And if there's no fire alarm there, because it's an older shopping center, a small strip shopping center, it's just a small barber shop, and there's no fire alarm system, then you wouldn't need that report. But where the system exists, it needs to be maintained, and you'll need those reports to move forward in your fire inspection or your use and occupancy inspection. Next slide, please. So private hydrants. So this can be a little bit of a conundrum. So, the McDonald's on the corner doesn't have a private hydrant. It sits right on the main road. And if there, God forbid, was a fire at that business, there are public WSSC hydrants that are used by the fire department right there along the main road. But if you're leasing a business in a big shopping center, so, not some little strip, but kind of a major older shopping center, let's say, that's might be 6 or 8 acres, a big space, there may be private hydrants on that campus or on that property. And so in addition to the sprinkler report and the fire alarm report, we'll ask for a report that shows that the hydrants have been tested and that they're working. Sometimes the sprinkler company, the company that checks the sprinklers, will also do that same report, but the inspector or the fire inspector will be looking for that. So, bigger properties have private hydrants, and, you lease a space in a large strip shopping center at the corner of 2 major roads in the county. And then you're trying to get through your fire inspection because you're opening, let's say, a small restaurant. You took over an existing restaurant, so there's a fire inspection associated with that. And the fire inspector comes in and says, okay, well, there are private hydrants out front. I need a report. And then now we can't get those, or the owner hasn't checked them in years. And then when he finally does check it, he finds out it doesn't work. It's hard to get the restaurant open because we can't pass the fire inspection because we don't have working fire hydrants. So, I guess this all speaks to, you need to think about the condition of the larger property. If you find a space that's in a good location at a good price, that's going to be a good location for your business, that's great. But you got to make sure that property is also, well maintained, and so that there won't be any hiccups in trying to get your business open in that property. Next slide, please. So fire extinguishers. So, back to my favorite example, the barber shop. So a small barber shop in an older strip shopping center wouldn't have a sprinkler usually, and it probably doesn't have a fire alarm system, but it does require some measure of fire safety or fire protection. And that's usually provided through portable fire extinguishers like the one you see here. And generally a small barbershop might need one at the front door and one at the back door, or maybe even just one at the front or at the back door, because it's 75 feet of travel distance. But in any event, a small business space might need 1 or 2 fire extinguishers. The fire extinguishers should be a minimum size, and you're welcome to contact our office. It's a 2A 10BC. So if you're going, if you're going to go to Home Depot and buy that 2-pack of fire extinguishers, those are usually too small. usually want to buy the fire extinguisher that comes separate, and that's usually large enough. It's a 2A 10BC or larger. But we also need that fire extinguisher to be tagged. If you're in a commercial space, you can't just go to Home Depot and buy a fire extinguisher and hang it on the wall. In general, we want that fire extinguisher to be tagged by a commercial fire extinguisher company. And you can kind of see there's a tag here. And the tag, when we come, should say 2021 on it, or perhaps maybe if it was done in the end of December 2020, maybe that's still okay. But you can see it needs to be tagged within the last year by a company that checks these fire extinguishers. So either, if you're a small business, you'll take your extinguishers to a company that does it because it's very expensive to have them come out and check them. But if you're an office building that has 60 fire extinguishers, you're going to have them come out and check them all right there in the building. But there's, of course, that's a larger business model. So, okay, next slide, please. So I guess the point of my little presentation here, and I'll try and move it along, is that you just want to make sure that the building you're looking at, the space you're going to either buy or lease, is going to be right for your business. And there's some potential pitfalls there. So for instance, next slide. So, there's some things that the county will look at, to have a barber shop and a strip shopping center is probably not a problem. The shopping center zones CSC, and barbershops are businesses, and businesses can be in CSC zones all day long. But that's one of the things they're going to look for when you first apply for your use and occupancy permit or your building permit is can what you're proposing to do be where you're proposing to do it? That's zoning. So, and then the other thing that'll get looked at, and these are kind of a little bit out of my lane, but I just want to kind of they're that idea of is this place right for what I'm proposing? I saw a private club try to open in the county once, and they had 2 parking spaces, literally. So 2 parking spaces only allows 5 occupants, or 4, or whatever what's called the parking schedule allows. So, it was a kind of a non-starter. They had leased this space, and they kind of tried to turn it into a club, and it didn't have any parking. You just got to be careful that the space you're looking at is the right space for what you intend to do. Next slide. So, and along those lines, whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing it, it may have to pass a fire inspection, either a fire inspection from the fire marshal or a fire safety inspection that's done, as part of the use and occupancy inspection by the DPIE use and occupancy inspector. So make sure that the building's going to pass a fire inspection. That's kind of a glaring error there, that door's off its hinges. But it kind of speaks to the condition of the building. Next slide. So, the fire marshal doesn't usually come around and tell people to install fire alarms and install sprinkler systems, but there are certain occupancy types that do require them. So for instance, a childcare center. Childcare centers have to be sprinklered. So, if you're a small business person who's intending to convert from a home daycare business to a commercial childcare center in a shopping center, let's say, the space has to be sprinklered. You can't have a childcare center that isn't sprinklered. So don't lease or buy a space that isn't sprinklered. Similarly, I had a customer or a client or a citizen who had a 5-year lease on a building to do childcare, and there wasn't any place for a playground. And that's zoning, and that's a different thing. But there are requirements that for both zoning and for the child care administration and for the fire department. And for the fire department, for childcare, need a sprinkler. So if you've leased a space that's not sprinklered, that's going to be a problem. So know the fire needs before you sign that lease.
James, can you
Yes.
address would a restaurant need a sprinkler system?
So it depends. So if it was a straight use transfer, so if you took over a small seafood restaurant in a strip shopping center that wasn't sprinklered, and you weren't going to change anything, you weren't going to change the kitchen, you weren't going to do any work, it's possible that you could move forward without a sprinkler. A new restaurant, so especially if it had more than 49 seats, so an assembly, which makes it an assembly. A new restaurant, you can't take the dress barn and turn it into a crab restaurant without a fire sprinkler system. So that would never work. So yes, a restaurant generally would need a fire sprinkler, but there could be existing restaurants that might be able to transfer to a new owner without a fire sprinkler system. You'd want to explore that again, that's why we're having this discussion, so that it's in your, it's one of the things kind of on in the back of your mind and on your checklist, hey, I want this, do I need sprinkler for this and would it work here? So sometimes existing might be able to continue without adding sprinklers, but generally a restaurant, especially if it's a sit-down restaurant with more than 49 seats, it would require sprinklers. So the subways, even though you can get a sub or a food at a Subway store, there aren't 49 seats in there. So it's not an assembly. It's essentially a business. So you've probably been in a Subway this week that wasn't sprinklered. So it as with a lot of things in the fire code and in permitting, it depends. But I would say new restaurant probably needs full sprinkler system and full fire alarm all day long. Taking over an existing without doing any changes, you need to talk to us. So if that, hopefully that's helped a little bit. Next slide or next move. So and this is back. So assemblies, to your question, restaurant. So assemblies, childcare, factory. We had there's a business in the county that does woodworking, and it's a fully sprinklered building, but they added a dust collection system. And so they needed to drop sprinkler heads into the cabinet that held the vacuum equipment, because they had constructed that kind of a large kind of room to hold their vacuum and dust collection equipment. So generally factories, if you're making something or have a manufacturing process, that needs to be sprinklered. Next slide. Will it need a fire alarm? Certain occupancy types have fire alarm requirements. So for instance, a childcare center. A childcare center needs to have a fire alarm, but specifically it needs a smoke detector in every room. So you might, where the children are going to sleep. So you might have a building that has a fire alarm in it. You think, I'm great. But childcare requires smoke detection, which might not have been part of the fire alarm system to begin with. And you say, okay, well, that's great, I'll add it. But maybe it's an older fire alarm system and you can't just simply, it doesn't have the capacity for you to come in and add additional devices. So just because there's a horn and strobe on the wall or a pull station like you see in the photo on the wall next to the door, doesn't mean, oh, I'm good, the fire alarm's good. Make sure it's the right fire alarm, a robust enough fire alarm for the proposed use, and that it works. We need that annual fire alarm report saying that there aren't any problems. Next slide. And that just speaks to us being, is it going to be adequate? Preschools, either need pull stations at the doors or smoke detectors in the classroom. So you need to know what's required for your proposed occupancy. Are the doors in good condition? Take a look. Did the doors swing freely? If there's a door closer, is it hooked up and does it work? When you open the door, it should close by itself and latch. Next slide. What kind of locks are on the doors? So generally you should be able to get out, if you're in a store and a car crashes into the front of it and you want to get out the back door, you should be able to get out the back door of that business without a key, special knowledge, or special effort. So if you get to that back door and it has what's called a double keyed lock, in other words, you need a key to open it from the inside, no good. We want the kind where you just throw the latch and you're out the door. So take a look at what's there. Generally, that's not a deal breaker. It's, locksmiths are expensive, but they're not deal breakers. If you need a new fire alarm system, that might be $90,000. A new lock on the door might be $900. So next slide. How old is the building? So if the building is old and, maybe not even that old, you might be looking at an office suite in a 40-year-old office building, and the building appears pretty modern to as you walk in the lobby and take the elevator up. But if it's 40 years old and they've never maintained their generator, or they haven't maintained their elevators or maintained the building very well, it might have trouble passing a fire inspection or the use and occupancy inspection. Next slide. So generators, take a look around the outside of the building, drive around, walk around. There's an old rusty generator out back, could be a problem. If they haven't maintained it, that generator isn't there so they can keep watching the game. If the power goes out, that generator may run their elevators in an emergency. It may run their emergency lighting in an emergency. It might keep the exit lights on. It might provide the lighting in the stairwells. So that and it's very common for building owners to neglect a generator on their property. So take a look around, because it's got to work. It may also run, if there's a fire pump in the building, that generator may run the fire pump, which means that when the power goes out, you may not have fire protection in the building. So see what's there. Next slide. Elevators have to have those, we all have seen those certificates in the elevator that says the elevator's been inspected and it's good through December of 2022. We want to make sure those certs or elevator certs are in place. So, is the owner taking care of the elevators? Next slide. Cooking can be a real pitfall, and Deb Freeman from the health department's on here, and I'm not sure exactly everything is going to be covered, but if you're proposing to do cooking, or if there's cooking equipment in a space, proceed carefully. It's got to be maintained. It's got to be to code. Or if you're proposing to do cooking and thinking you're going to bring cooking equipment in to do something, be very careful. I had a childcare center. They spent a lot of money. They converted an existing home on a major thoroughfare into a beautiful childcare center, but they proposed to bring in flat grills to do the cooking. Well, that requires ventilation and extinguishing for that cooking arrangement. So it was a major error, really, on the part of their architect, which they did have. So be careful with cooking. If your business requires food preparation, or food preparation is part of it, or you're going to bring something in, be very careful with that. Next slide. So, if you do need a fire marshal inspection as part of a U&O process, here's the best way is to go online. There's the link is there, and it's a simple payment. And you just put down the type of inspection you're requesting. It populates the fee. Call us if you're having trouble figuring out which type of inspection you need. Daycare is $100 for a childcare center, but it's $120 to open a barbershop. So the fees are different. And barbershops shouldn't need a fire inspection, but a business occupancy that does, it'd be $120 per 3,000 square feet. So if you're having trouble figuring out which fee it is, call us. That's my cell phone number. That's my email address. We're trying to cover a lot of ground here. So if I've hit on something where you have a question, feel free to reach out directly to me. And I'm sorry if I don't know whether I went long. I'm sure I did. So, but thank you. And now to Myra. So Myra Reilly from the health department is going to take over, I think.
So, right, Myra from DPIE, some of that's been covered. So she'll just quickly go over some things that she needs to share and then turn it over to Debra, because we're at 10:42. Thank you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Myra Leonard. I am with the DPIE Health Plan Review Section. I operate under the DPIE building process, where I do all the inspections and all the reviews for the health department that they license. So let me start my presentation. Sorry about that. I was all engrossed in the previous thing, because I learned some things today myself. All right, so again, I'm with the health department, and I just went over what we do. We do inspections, and like I said, we're a part of the DPIE process. So when you submit plans through our electronic DPIE process, it will come to my department to review. We do permit and license food facilities, swimming pools, Six Flags, the stadium. We do mega projects like MGM, subdivisions, and apartment complexes with swimming pools. So we're here to help you get through this process, because our goal is to make sure every application that comes through our department gets reviewed and approved. And so I'm going to walk you through what we do in our process and how we can assist you to get you through this process so you can get your business open, because we want everybody to be able to work, live, play, and have fun in Prince George's County. So that's why we're here, to make sure your businesses are up and they're running, and you come into our county, because we want you in our county. Okay. So the type of reviews, as I said before, we do the reviews in the plan review constructions, interior remodels, for swimming pools. We do homes that are on private well and septic, as well as commercial facilities that are on private well and septic. We do raise inspections, and we do those, to make sure that when those buildings are torn down, that there are no contaminants going into the air or the groundwater. And I'll cover a little bit of that as I go through my presentation. And again, of course, we do public swimming pools, splash pads, spas, both indoor and outdoor. Our applicable codes are, we are governed by the county, COMAR, which is our governing agency. And because we are a home rule county, we do follow under some guidelines under Prince George's County, where we can be a little bit stricter than what our county code allow us to be. And so we have COMAR, we have Maryland Department of the Environment, who we use to do our reviews underneath, as well as the county. All right, so people always ask us, what's your turnaround time? And I always hear about the turnaround times of everybody else. And it could be their reviews are just a little bit more detailed than ours is. So typically a health review, when it comes in, we'll respond to you within 14 days. And we strive to do it a lot quicker. Right now, we're probably at 6 days. We're constantly reviewing plans that are coming in, and the county is growing exponentially, and apartments, swimming pools, and big structures are coming up all the time. So we do review kind of like first come, first serve, but we treat them the same, the same way we treat the independent business owners. Of course, because like you said, we do have peer review. Those things take precedence because those people pay extra money to get those things expedited. So we have to put those on, the other ones on pause and take care of those. We are a division of 5. I'm 5 in my section, reviewers as well as inspection. So we do both the review, and we also go out and do our own inspection. And I know that the inspections group, the DPIE inspections group, also will come out there and do the inspection. But health is unique in that we do our own through our state code, that we're only allowed to approve our facilities that we license in conjunction with either the third party inspection program or DPIE inspection program. Okay. So like I said, 14 days right now, where we are today, it's 6 days. So hopefully if you submit a great package with all the information that we need, we can get you turned around and approved pretty quickly. Like I said, our inspections are done in conjunction with the other disciplines. So when the project comes into us or distributed to us after you pass the plan coordinator stage, you will have if needed, a mechanical review, a structural review, a health review, a fire review. And I'm not sure what their turnaround times are, because they look at a little bit more detail, especially think about a structure. You got to think about the building, the pending, the foundation, the walls, the ceiling. Their review is going to take much longer than mine, So I'm looking for specific things to make sure when that restaurant open, that it's going to be done in a manner that we try to mitigate people getting sick, making sure the flow of food through the facility is done in a safe manner. So we make sure that the equipment and everything that you're proposing to do based on your menu matches up. So sometimes we'll get restaurants that their menu is super aggressive, but they only have a walk-in, they only have a reach-in refrigerator and a reach-in freezer. But you have food that typically at the end of the day gets cooled down and reused. Well, that's when we'll slow up the review and put it on hold and send it back to you, say, hey, based on your menu and based on your equipment, you're going to need some additional equipment. So please, 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 when you are thinking about opening a restaurant, that you make sure that you're thinking what I'm going to do with the food at the end of the day. Am I going to keep it or I'm going to discard it? Especially places that have hot holding units. A lot of those places, you can't determine when the last crowd is going to come. And then you have some restaurants who just decide, I'm going to just let the food run out so I can maintain my food costs. And I'm just going to go ahead and not have to worry about keeping food to the next day. After a while, we notice, because we come in and we see all this food left over, and then we walk in and do your inspection the next day, and you have all this food, but you said you weren't maintaining anything at the end of the day and bringing it over to the next day. So of course, what happens? Now you're in violation of what we call the HACCP form, because based on that, you told us you were going to do something else. And what we don't want to do, because you're in violation, is discard your food. So when you're planning to have a restaurant, please plan your equipment to match your menu. And I know at the beginning, funds start running low as you start doing construction, but just remember that you can always add equipment. And all you have to do is contact my office and make sure that the equipment that you're purchasing is NSF approved or ELT or one of the approved testing agencies that is allowed. We'll treat that as what we call an equipment evaluation. So you don't want to put equipment, just like they talked about earlier with the addition in the new bathroom. We go through the same thing. We go into your facility and say, wait, where did this stove come from? Where did that come from? When did this get put into this operation? And guess what? Okay, now you got to start over. You got to call me. You got to send me some plans. You got to send me the fees. I got to review it. It's going to come in as the order is received, so I may be on a 14-day turnaround and you may be the 16th, 17th, 18th review on the list. And your business is slowing down because you cannot go ahead and function the way you want to function because you failed to say, hey, I have a new piece of equipment I need to purchase because I see right now that we're going to need it based on what we're doing. What do I need to do? Our numbers is always available. It is always available. And I'm going to come back to that. All right, so our health plan, how we typically do our plan. Your plans come in, we review them. We look for things to make sure that you're matching everything on our code. Are you going to COMAR 101503 if you're doing food? 101701 if you're doing pools, 2601 if you're doing well and septic. We're going to go through those codes and make sure that everything that's on our code is in your plans. We do carry and we do maintain on our website checklists and manuals to assist you in this process. So it's not you have to guess. We even have pictures in the manual of exactly how and what we're looking for. So it can be relatively easy, but you got to do the legwork first to see what we need. So you won't be submitting plans to us that are incomplete, and then we have to send them back to you, and then you send them back to us, still incomplete, and then we send them back to you and say that you didn't even do anything. We're trying to stop that. We're trying to get you through at a minimum of one review resubmittal, only one. And let us help you. What we asked you to do, when we ask you what we need, please, please, please answer those questions, submit them to us. We have our emails on Project Doc. You can always go to our emails and ask us a question before you submit something to make sure what you're doing is correct. And we don't have a problem with that, because I'd rather for you to call me or text me and say, Miss Leonard, I was confused about what you were asking. Is this what you want to know before I send it back? And let me look at it. I'll look at it. And I'm like, yes, send it on through. I have so many emails like that. We're here to help you. We are here to help you get your business up and running. My director said every application that comes through, we want them to get approved. But you're going to be approved according to the rules and the regulations and the codes. So we're not going to just throw you on across just to say we got you open. We do, and we are obligated by law to make sure we follow the law, okay? So here's a simple plan review. And if you look to the right, those are drawings that we typically look at. And we go through the drawings and then we make sure that everything is done according to code. And what you'll end up with is that beautiful restaurant sitting there. And I didn't have a picture of the kitchen. I mean, I'll just put some stuff together for you real quick. But what we end up with is the beautiful picture we see here, which is the restaurant. And that's what any business owner or company, they want to get to that point. This point is what it is in theory. After we work through what's in theory, we want it to come to fruition, and we want it to look like that in the end. Okay, and we are here to help you. I cannot say that enough. We are here to help you get to the picture in the top of the picture, in the top of the picture to get you there. Okay, that's what we're here for. This is actually what our pool submission looked like, and it's just one small portion of our pool information. And unfortunately, a lot of times, these big apartment complexes, senior citizens, sports complexes, they build these structures and they forget to give us the information about the pool. So I have to put it on hold and say, I need all the information you see there before you, and I need it fast. Because I look and see that this thing has been sitting before it came to me, because if it goes through the peer review, it has to be approved in the peer review process before it comes to me. We had a case that today that they came in and they bought it on paper ahead of the electronic submission. The case started in 2018. The case got approved by us on paper in 2018. Guess what? It just showed up on December the 3rd in the electronic version. Guess what? That person who reviewed is no longer with us. He retired. And guess what? Now I have to review the whole thing all over again. And this is why we changed our business method, our business operating method, because we used to say, yep, so we can be looking at it at the same time peer review can be going on. We can review it and we can approve it. We'll just wait for the electronic and we'll sign off. We can't do that anymore, because guess what? The drawings that you had that he reviewed don't match what you uploaded. So guess what? Now I have to re-review the whole thing all over again from scratch. And that's going to hold you up even longer. So, we tried to work around and we tried to work with and we tried to work simultaneously to help the process go through. But if it goes through as a peer review, it'll show up on my screen. I will make sure somebody gets on there within 3 days. Then I'll follow up after him on the 3rd day, because I have to try to get it done this will not go through 14 days, I promise you. It will not have to sit another 14 days before somebody get it. So like we said, we're governed by law to get those peer reviews done within a timely manner. And unfortunately, because the health review is under a different code, we have to review them. So it can't be reviewed at the same time the peer review is going on. Else changes may be going on while the peer review is going on, and then it gets to us and then we have to re-review everything all over again. So that's just a quick how we do our pool inspections and how we do our food. And this is what it looks like when we go out in the field and we do our piping inspection. You've seen it on paper. Now we go out in the field before they put the gunite and the concrete down, and we measure and we make sure wherever their returns are, they're there. Wherever their main drains are, they're there. And to the right is the finished product. What you get is a lovely body of water for the residents in that development to enjoy for the summer. Okay. We also do raise inspections, and the purpose of the health department doing the raise inspection, because people unfortunately don't understand why we're even a part of this process. Well, in this process, we have to make sure that once that house comes down, that air that and the dust and the contents and the asbestos or the lead or whatever do not end up in our atmosphere. People usually live down the street from sometimes where these structures are torn down. Some people may live next door. Maybe the house that's next door that caught on fire, that's going all the way down to the foundation or not going to the foundation, or all of it being removed. So we have to go and make sure that these places are free of all those elements or those contaminants that could cause air pollutions. And you could be a person next door that have allergic reactions to this. We don't want to make our neighbors sick. So we have to go in and make sure that the house, before they tear it down, raise it, demolish it, is safe. Also, while we're there, we also are looking for abandoned wells and septic systems, because every 10 years, or, you know, our what we call our category, water sewer categories, it changes in the county. And where once water was not supplied, or sewage on the site disposal systems were not available to these properties and these addresses, well, guess what? WSSC is now extending water and sewer to a lot more places in Prince George's County. Think about it, where we were 40 years ago. We probably had more people on well and septic than we had public, because a lot of areas were in rural areas. We didn't have public utilities going all the way out that far. So you have a house and it's being torn down. It may have been on well and septic in 20 years ago. Nobody knew that they had a septic system. We had a situation in Suitland, probably 10 years ago. And what happened was, this was in Suitland off of Silver Hill Road. I don't know who found it, but they found a body in a well, in an abandoned well in Suitland. Where are there wells in Suitland? And so, of course, we started making sure we look for well and septics abandoned. And if we find them, we make sure that they backfill them. The health department will join us and they will follow up. Once it's all backfilled and finished, then they will submit to us. We'll go ahead and give the permits department the okay for them to go ahead and tear down the structure. Okay.
That's fantastic.
Yep. So this is our rate process.
Myra, can we go ahead and get through the next few slides quickly so that we can get.
Sure. All right. So this is the other part of what we do. Well and septic, for those people who, or businesses that live in the southern part of the county or the green area that we have here. These are the areas that WSSC has not been connected to it, or city water has not been connected to it. So they have to come through our program to get the approvals to build their homes, to build their businesses. So we do well and septic inspection, and it's a daunting test. All of our forms are located on the website through a link under health forms. Any form you need, application, any information you need, checklist you need, it's all there. All right, here's my contact information. If you have any questions, again, they're going to probably provide a copy of this presentation. My numbers are there. Feel free to give me a call. And I guess we're going to put the questions in the chat. Now look through the chat and I'll see questions I can answer for you. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Now, from the health department, thank you very much, Debra Freeman. Off to you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Debra Freeman. I'm an environmental health specialist. I'm the program chief for the food protection program of the county health department. What I want to talk about, go ahead to the next slide, is most people that have restaurants or want to go into a restaurant know they need a health department permit. But we license and inspect all food service facilities, not just restaurants, but grocery stores, any place where food or drink is prepared for sale or service on the premises or elsewhere. So a food service facility includes a restaurant, coffee shop, cafeteria. What you often don't know is in another business, if you add food to another business, it becomes a food service facility. So if you have a cell phone store or a convenience store that's just selling tobacco products, but you add a slushy machine or a coffee maker or popcorn or anything like that, you've become a food service facility and need to have a license with us. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, one thing that it does not include, this has been a somewhat recent addition to the code, is you can sell all the prepackaged snack foods and sodas and bottled water and canned and bottled drinks that you want, and you do not need a permit for that. But if you're going to sell anything that's called potentially hazardous, like milk, eggs, butter, things of that nature, frozen foods, even frozen novelty ice cream products, then that makes you a food service facility and you do need to have a license for that. But you can have all the snack foods you want with no permit. Next slide. So all food facilities must be licensed for applying for the food service facility license permit with the Momentum system. And it's a new online system. Go to the next slide. Thank you. One of the things that people get confused about is what priority they are. We have 3 categories of licenses. A high priority is one that the cooking method goes through the danger zone at least twice. An example would be a Wendy's, because they cook their burgers and then they use them later to make chili. So they cool down those burgers, break it up, and make it chili for the next day. So that makes them a high priority. A moderate priority is just usually a cook serve method. So at McDonald's, even though it looks a lot like a Wendy's, is a moderate priority. And excuse the slide, it should be moderate and not mid, but it's moderate priority. McDonald's just puts the burger on the grill, takes it off, and serves it. A low priority is usually no cooking involved, unless it's non-potentially hazardous things like popcorn. So a low priority is often a convenience store that's selling some grocery items, maybe has coffee and soda, and they would be a low priority. Or a CVS is a low priority because they have frozen dinners and grocery items. Next slide. One of the things that you'll have to do in the application process is submit what's called a HACCP plan. HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, and it's a plan to identify whatever potential contamination or growth that can occur that could make the food unsafe. If you are a moderate or a high priority, you will have to submit one of these plans, and you can write it yourself. We give you guidelines on how to write it, but it's basically telling you what kind of corrective actions you're going to take from start to finish to ensure that that food is safe from the very beginning until you serve it. It also puts into place record keeping. You keep, logs of temperatures, so that if there is a problem, we can always go back and see where that problem may have existed. Go ahead to the next slide. And now that's all I had for that, but I just wanted to emphasize that even if you're going into a business that you don't think of as a food facility, if you add a food component to it, you do become a food service facility and need a license from us. And if it's brand new, never had food before, chances are it goes through Myra's group to have plans. Or if you're going into an existing restaurant or a business that had food license before, then it goes through my group and we just do a change of ownership inspection. And that's all I had.
Debra, thank you very much. Nicole, Myra, James, everybody, thank you so very much. We've run a little long, but we do have a couple quick questions here. So if people want to stick with us, where would a smoothie bar or blended health drink bar fall in the priority matrix? Can someone, Debra, can you answer that?
Yes. If it's just powdered substance and water reconstituted, it would be a low priority. But if it's using fresh fruit, it would be a moderate priority.
Thank you. Can you discuss the food manager card requirement?
Yes, all moderate and high priority facilities do require that someone on site have a food service manager card, which they get by taking a class They take the class, get a certificate, and then submit the certificate to the Momentum system to get a Prince George's County ID card.
Thank you. For Nicole, quickly, Nicole, can you discuss the sign permit requirements with park and planning? A lot of businesses are not aware they need a sign permit to hang or install a sign on the outside of their business.
Yes, you do need a sign permit, and that is a separate application. You can apply at the same link that Clarence provided. It will go through a park and planning. This is more of a park and planning, review, because they also have regulations regarding allowable lot coverage. You will need a sign permit for banners. I know sometimes there's a confusion about that. If it's electrical, you're going to need to upload plans for that as well as structural plans, but you will also need to apply for electrical permit. So you can reach out to me if you need more information regarding a sign permit. But yes, that is a separate application than the building permit.
Understood, but you're saying that through the link on your page and that Clarence has actually shared, that there is that one link will get you through to park and planning in their process.
No, so once Clarence can chime in here, but once there are different buttons, you can select U&O, you can select building, all of those. And once it's determined that it's a sign permit, it will be the same as a building permit. It will be tasked to park and planning, correct? So they're also looking at it simultaneously while our team is looking at it for any structural, say for example, a ground standing sign that will need structural plans. So it's treated the same as the other applications. And so you do have to, I think the key point here is that you do need to apply for that separately. That is a separate application that cannot be clumped with a building permit or U&O permit. I hope that clarifies it.
Can one legally have a food-based, home-based business?
So I'm going to let Maher and I know you need a U&O for that, but I'll let Maher and Debra answer that question.
Can you legally have a food-based, home-based business is the question.
Yes, the cottage food law allows for non-potentially hazardous foods, certain foods, to be prepared in the home up to a certain amount per year. I think the limit is like $20,000. It has to be properly labeled and then can be sold at farmers markets and various places.
Mm.
But it's only for non-potentially hazardous foods like brownies, cakes, cupcakes, that sort of thing.
And is there something on your website related to that? So if somebody needed more information, they could go there?
I believe there is, yes.
Okay. And so just a question about, a parking lot. So there was they received a permit to construct a parking lot on a vacant lot that is adjacent to their building. And they received the permit to do that. And the inspector indicated that they needed another permit to install the lights on the lot, even though the original plan that included lights had been approved. Can someone explain that dynamic, or is there something that could have been done differently to perhaps address this situation?
Well, good morning, this is Clarence, and it's been so far. It's been a very interesting morning. It sounds like to me that they applied for a grading permit, which is under our site road division. So when they apply for the grading permit, that does not include putting up the light poles, which is a building permit. So put my number in the chat as well to have that individual just to contact me so we can find out where that is in the process.
Gotcha. So one other question, what's the premise for storage needing and fire alarm and sprinkler systems? So let me back up. Let's ask this question first. So if there's no fire alarm or sprinkler system in place, a new occupant, what does a new occupant need to do? Clarence, is there something from the DPIE standpoint that people need to know? or is it just the fire marshal?
Apologize. I was working on another case. What was the question again?
So if there is no fire alarm or sprinkler system in place, and this is a new occupant, what is there a role that DPIE plays in this?
Well, it all depends on what the use is going to be. Because once that use comes in, we're going to send it out to all of our reviewers. If our fire plan reviewers find that that the use requires a sprinkler system in that building, then we will let them know at that time. But prayerfully, I think as Nicole said early on, that we need to consult people who know the permitting system and know what the codes are. If they hired an architect who walked that space with them, initially, then they should have been told at that time what is required for that type of use in that space. That should have been known up front.
Gotcha. And so many of these others have kind of been answered, but just for the good of the group, how will businesses know if they need a fire protection system review?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but yeah, that's going to go back again to that architect or engineer that the commercial owners hires, because again, it goes back to the use and type of building it is, how old it might be. And so that could trigger them having to put in a fire protection system in that building. Certainly, if it's a restaurant or something like that, that's surely going to trigger that fire protection system going in there, or daycare center. That's going to trigger it. So a lot of that information actually should be shared with the owners by the architect or engineer that they hire to do that walkthrough with.
All right, so we have had a lot of questions, a lot of good information shared here. I can't thank the panelists enough. We're at 11:15, 11:16, and I know we're kept people a little over. So you have been provided direct points of contact for the individuals here. You should know that the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation is also here to assist you in navigating this. As you've heard from everybody, and as you've heard from our other pathway sessions, it's always good to get the experts and to get different experts to help you navigate this process. So in this case, it may be your construction engineering firm. Again, putting yourself on the email so that you're getting the e-plan notifications and you can check what's going on. You've heard an awful lot here today. Hopefully you were taking really good notes. And if you have additional questions, just know we're all here to help you, and we'll still be around tomorrow. So please reach out to us. Let us know how we can assist you. And if wrapping up, just quickly, does anybody else have any good last minute advice? One last piece of advice they want to give business owners to help them in saving time and money in any of these processes? Any last word from any of the individuals here?
Well, I'll just say this. I'll piggyback again off of Nicole, that please, for all of our owners, make sure that you're part of the process of putting your name in on our project doc system, so you can see in real time what's going on with your project. Because a lot of times we get a lot of owners who call us and say, well, I haven't heard anything, I don't know what's going on. So we've made it available so that the owners, there's only one, that you can't make any changes. You can, you can view only, but you can't make any requests. So that's between you and the person that you hired as your applicant, to make sure that they're doing their job. By you also can monitor that process to make sure it's going smooth. If something's like it's taking a long time, reach out to either the reviewer, because when you go into the system, you can see the reviewer name next to that line item. And so if you think it's taking too long, just send them an email. Well, we don't have a problem with that, but we do try to make sure that we maintain that one-on-one contact with the applicant of record, because that's the person that you have hired to run your project. But you can remove that person at any time. So please never feel like you stuck. If something goes wrong, you just send us an email that I'm the owner and I want to replace this person with that person, and we can move forward.
Thank you. Anybody else with any last words of wisdom? Hearing none others, I'm going to say great job to everybody. Thank you very much. Please know the recording will be made available and online and on our YouTube channel, I believe, as well as on our website. You will also have access to the PowerPoint presentations. I encourage you, please click on the links that Nicole has included in the presentation, because those links will give you to additional charts and information. As she mentioned, there may be local municipal regulations that you need to also comply with. So please understand that there's a lot of interfaces in this process, but you don't have to go it alone. We're here to support you, and hopefully you also have good professionals assisting you in your business expansion. Please look forward to joining us in January when we kick off the program dealing with legal issues on use and occupancy, and following up on some other lessons learned. And we'll also be covering financial elements, financing your expansion, how to know when you're ready to expand, and then what are the tools there from a financing standpoint to assist you. So please join us, look at our calendar of events, and be sure to register for those upcoming programs. Thank you so much to all of our speakers, to Clarence, to Nicole, to Debra, Myra, and Jim. Thank you all very much. Have a good day and stay well. Be safe, everybody. Thank you. So stop the recording, maybe, or